All righty, guys, it looks like we are live. Give me a minute here so I can add in the Facebook groups and get our wonderful Mile High Huddle community all together here on a wonderful Friday evening. We got green check marks across all of our platforms now. So, Mile High hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I am your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me is not per usual because we don't get to talk to Carl very often, but we got Carl Dumler filling in for Eric Trickle this evening. Carl, been a while since you and I got to sit down and face-to-face and talk some Broncos football. It's been at least since the NFL draft show, at least from what I remember. But it's always good to see you, man. How you doing?
I'm good. And I'm sorry for everyone expecting Eric tonight. I know everybody loves to see that beautiful face every Friday night. But I'm glad I could be here to join you. And yeah, it has been a little while since we got to talk some football live on a show. I mean, we get to talk every day, kind of. I mean, on Facebook and stuff like that. But actually getting to talk face to face, and we've had a couple weeks of OTAs, rookie mini camp. So there's definitely some storylines out there. Some players making a name for themselves. Others maybe not making a name for themselves, or making a negative name for themselves in some ways. So we'll get into that for sure. But yeah, no, great to see everybody here tonight and getting a chance to talk some possible bold predictions for the Broncos moving into this 2024 season.
Yeah, guys, tonight it says 5 biggest storylines for the title of the show. We're doing 5 bold predictions, and I've got a handful that are pretty well, I don't want to call them doozies, but they're a little outside the box here. So I'm excited to talk with that and go over everything with you, Carl. Let's talk about this mini camp a little bit. And one of the things that I've seen multiple different times over the course of the past couple of days here is where is it at? This one from Todd Osendorf. Hello, Todd. Thanks for joining us. Saying, I've been hearing that Jarrett Stidham is looking the best of the quarterbacks at the moment. It would be what is expected as of right now. The last I had heard was that Stidham, at least in terms of what is going on at minicamp right now, had the best throw of all quarterbacks, hitting a 55-yard touchdown pass to Marvin Mims on what appeared to be a post route. So, Carl, do you have any takeaways right now from what's going on at minicamp, or is it kind of a little bit overblown with media and social media as it stands currently in today's day and age?
I mean, it's always going to be a little bit overblown just because everybody is just wanting to hang on every single word of, a 54 or 55-yard touchdown pass. Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. It is. But, it's one throw, one play. Mm-hmm. Every quarterback that's in the NFL can make that one throw, at some point. It's obviously who can be the most consistent. And it's good to hear that Stidham's being consistent. You would hope the guy that's been there in this system for now, this is his second offseason, would be farther along, would understand the plays and how to get the ball out there quickly, where it should be going, all those kind of things. And he's another quarterback who was handpicked by Sean Payton.
Yep.
I remember last offseason, Sean Payton almost had more good things to say about Stidham than he did Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Like he was almost more excited about this guy than Wilson. And I know last year was not a great year for Stidham. And I'm not expecting him to go out there and wow anybody this year by any means. But having a consistent backup that you can trust to go on the field and do what you want them to do as a coach, that's a good thing to have in your locker room. And I think he's a great locker room guy in the sense of he's even talked about, I want to help these young guys. I want to be there, answer any questions they have, work with Bo Nix, all those kind of, like, that's great when we're talking about a backup. Talking about a guy that is not a backup, though, is Michael Ronquillo coming in with some stars here saying, good evening, Lance and Carl on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. I don't get to say that very often. So, but go Broncos, Michael, go you. Thank you for showing up. And like I said, you are starter quality every single night. You bring it every single time. So thank you.
Mile High Huddle, Mount Rushmore, quite honestly. This dude's in here every single show, whether it's in the morning, whether it's at the evening, Sunday through Saturday. Michael Ronquillo is one of the best supporters at Mile High Huddle that we definitely have. Absolutely, man. Thank you for joining us. As you always do, we also got Phil McLaughlin jumping in here. Good evening, Lance and Carl. How many guys have been out of OTAs with injury? So this actually kind of popped up the other day. It was something that Sean Payton kind of dropped out in the press conference a couple of days ago, saying, announcing that rookie running back Audric Estime had a it's a PRP, platelet-rich plasma injection in his knee with a knee scope to kind of take care of something that kind of came up with him at OTAs. Outside of that, though, I don't think that there's been anything really severe in terms of injuries. And I know that Sean Payton also did say that Audric Estime is going to be ready for training camp. He'll be there at the tail end of July. The PRP injections, they're very, very minute in terms of what a surgery, quote unquote, would be. And a knee scope, if they're shoving up a little microscope and they're taking a look around, seeing if there's anything damaged. So to me, that's not a huge deal. Anything that you've heard, Carl, outside of that?
Well, you got Drew Sanders, of course, who's out for the season. I know this week they talked about a couple different players. Caden Stearns is still out. Not sure when he's going to be back. You've got, I'm trying to remember who else here. You've got Riley Moss was on the sidelines this time compared to weeks before. Greg Dulcich has still been out at this point. They're all minor. They're keeping them out more as a precaution right now than anything else. They've got some time. Some of those guys are veterans. Not sure that OTAs are the biggest deal for them to be missing. I mean, you still want them out there if you can get them out there. Even Patrick Surtain has been missing the OTAs so far. And I don't mind that. Protect that guy. Wrap him in bubble wrap. Like, we don't even need to see him until week 1 of the season, in my opinion. Because you lose him, things could get interesting real quick in that secondary. But yeah, there's, like I said, every team has those few players that are banged up and they're trying to be a little bit more cautious at this point. You know, you want them for September, October, November, December, not June or May. I guess we're still in May right now. So it's things to watch for, you know, like the Riley Moss one, him being injured all last year or most of the year. And then getting injured this year already, like that becomes a concern. You think of Greg Dulcich, again, another guy that just keeps getting injury after injury. And you can have all the talent in the world, but if you can't stay on the field, it doesn't matter.
No, I'm right there with you. And the Greg Dulcich thing right now, everyone's worried about the hamstrings, and that's been the major issue with him over the past couple of seasons. But this is not a hamstring thing with him. He's got a foot injury that he's kind of working through. So they're being precautious with that as much as they possibly can be. And it sounds like OTAs are going to change, maybe even as early as like next season, where they're not going to have OTAs anymore. The NFL, the NFLPA are trying to push away from that, so you don't have to have these OTAs, the mandatory mini camps. Essentially, this extra work that you're putting in is going to go away. So you're not going to see nearly as many of these injuries in the OTAs and these non-mandatory practices. Like I remember a handful of years ago, I believe it was Kelvin Benjamin for the Carolina Panthers, tore his ACL in his second year mini camp. Like you've got Drew Sanders working off on the side. That he popped his Achilles. Like you might not see nearly as many of these injuries. And quite honestly, these OTAs, them not being mandatory where you have to show up and do these installs and stuff, they might actually help these players throughout the rest of the offseason to be ready for training camp. Like you never know, running out there playing against air, you step on somebody's foot, you twist your ankle, now you're out for the next 6 weeks and you're not really ready to go into training camp. The Riley Moss situation is an interesting one. I'm not sure exactly what he's going through, but that it was a sports hernia. He had a surgery on it right at the very beginning of training camp last year. Maybe you don't see stuff like that, and that's a freak injury to begin with. So the OTA injuries, a lot of that's all minor soft tissue stuff for the most part. You're talking hamstrings, quads, people getting back into the routines of playing football and stuff like that. You do get the major ones, ACLs, Achilles, and stuff like that. Those are, again, freak injuries. But to me, I don't think it's necessarily a huge deal with guys like Dulcich right now. Like you said, like Riley Moss, Pat Surtain not participating, even Colton Sutton with his, I'll call it a contract holdout because technically that's what it is. But him not being there, he doesn't have to be there right now. It's not mandatory minicamp. I believe that starts next week, right? So like he doesn't have. Are we in? Yeah, something like that. Mandatory minicamp. If he doesn't show up for mandatory minicamp, then maybe we can start talking about a potential issue here. as of right now, this is all mostly going through the motions, 50% speed. We're just kind of getting out there, having some fun, and playing a little bit of football and getting back into the game shape of things. So again, missing these OTAs, I don't really have a big problem with that. We do have Lawrence Rivera jumping in here. What up, guys? Have to give Luke Patterson a big happy birthday. Yes, absolutely. Happy birthday to Big Papa Luke over there with the Mile High Insiders with milehighhuddle.com. It's always great to talk with him as well. But happy birthday, Luke, from myself and the rest of the Sanderson family.
Yeah, definitely. Luke, I hope you're having a good day out there with your family, enjoying a nice day. Hopefully out here is beautiful weather. I went golfing earlier. I mean, I wish my golf game was as beautiful as the weather, but no, I got a couple things figured out. I shot an 82 today, so not my best, not my worst by any means. But
you're below triple digits. That's a win for you for sure, especially in my world. I'm lucky if I get the ball off the ground. Worm burners for days.
You know, it's one of those. Everything's always in perspective. You know, when I was in high school, I was shooting mid 70s almost every single day. And so it's just frustrating to know what I was at one point to what I am today.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure plenty of athletes the same way. You remember the good old days when you were at the peak of your career, and I'm just not there right now, you know, and I'm hoping as my kids get older, they will fall in love with the game, and then I can go out there with them and have that excuse of, hey, bonding with my kids, and then really work on my golf game and get back into it. But that's a couple years down the road. Anyway, back to Luke. Happy birthday to him. Hope he has a great weekend out there in Colorado. Yeah, I'm with you on the injuries. My one concern, if you push everything, like you get rid of all these voluntary things, and this is just, it's anybody. When you get out of routine, it's hard to get back into routine.
Yeah.
You know, and we're seeing it. And I mean, a little bit as a Broncos person, seeing what's going on with the Chiefs and all of their legal troubles that they're running into left and right. Like that's the worst part of the offseason is that almost every major article or news heading out there, it's some player did something that they shouldn't have done.
Yep.
And it sucks, you know, and I hate that. You know, I'm just always hoping these guys are out there making good decisions, surrounding themselves with good people. And so I do worry a little bit if you don't have this little section here in the middle of the offseason where you get them together, get them at least some conditioning, get them back to thinking about football, that some bad things could happen that way. But no, I'd rather have a longer training camp. You know, then you get media out there looking every single day. You're getting the more consistent, you know, for a couple months build up to the season compared to, hey, we've got a few weeks and then get ready to go.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. The longer training camp is going to be a lot more fun to kind of navigate because I'll potentially actually get an opportunity to come down there and go see training camp live. I've never actually been to training camp. I know you go every year, at least for a couple of days. So maybe one of these days we can actually link up and have a good pseudo Mile High Huddle meet and greet and hang out and have some beers or maybe an old fashioned or two, something like that. And it just have some fun. But before we get into the main crux of our conversation here, I want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Obviously, Todd Osendorf just got a comment in here. Kevin Gray, David Youngkin, Mike Ronquillo, Ray Osborne, Lawrence Rivera, Conga Hydra. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for joining us here on a wonderful Friday evening. Make sure you guys smash that like button on the way. If you guys got a question or a comment, sound off in the chat. The easiest way to make sure that we get those and bring them to the show. Obviously, super chat, stars, donations. If you're not able to do so, whatever, we'll figure it out. We'll try to get as many of you guys incorporated into the show as possible. But tonight, guys, on Dove Valley Deep Divers, Carl and I are going to do 5 bold predictions apiece and just talk some fun. The bold predictions part of this season, like obviously the off season, you got to try to drum up some conversation. Bold predictions are always a great way to do that. Carl and I have done this particular show in the past before I got in with Dove Valley Deep Divers and doing this. Do you remember that show? It was a long time ago, but we've done a 5 bold predictions before and it was a lot of fun. I'm going to start us off tonight. I'm going to go on the offensive side of the football. And this is going to sound crazy, especially considering the usage that he had last season. But I think that Marvin Mims is going to score 10 touchdowns this year. And a big reason why I say that is because he's going to have an expanded role as a wide receiver, specifically coming out of the slot. So I kind of expect the same role as like Brandon Cooks, not quite what Jerry Jeudy did last year, but utilizing him a lot on the crossing routes, the intermediate in routes, getting the ball out of Bo Nix's hands quickly, and allowing Marvin Mims to go to work. But the big thing here is punt and kick return. He had that kick return touchdown against the Miami Dolphins early last season. But with the new kickoff rules, it's going to accentuate his ability to return the football on kickoffs. Like, he has good vision. He understands how to exploit holes and like create separation with that speed. And his ability to return kickoffs is going to just jump his production this year. And then you also open up the gadget designs with Marvin Mims. With Jerry Jeudy out of the way, I think this is a big opportunity for Mims to really accentuate his production. And with the kickoff rules, the expanded role as receiver, 10 touchdowns to me, I like that. It's a combined touchdown effort, but I like that number for him this year.
Yeah. So my top bold prediction, because we didn't talk about this beforehand.
No, we did not talk about this at all.
So I actually wrote more than 5 just in case we had a couple that were the same. But my very top one was Marvin Mims will lead the team in touchdowns.
Yep.
And I broke it down as 4 receiving, 1 rushing, 3 special teams touchdowns. So it's 8 touchdowns. I don't think that's actually too crazy to speak about a player. I mean, we've seen players produce that kind of thing. And because he impacts the game in so many different ways, can get those special touches, like you said, special teams this year. I think there's going to be some teams that really figure this out quickly, how to handle special teams. And they're going to have a huge advantage this year where they're going to get maybe a couple extra touchdowns compared to the rest. I feel like the Broncos have put a huge emphasis on we want to be good at special teams. Not only just because they have Marvin Mims, but just they're seeing this could be our big advantage to win a couple games this year. This could be the make or break. I mean, we even saw the Chiefs special teams coordinator was talking about putting Justin Reed out there on kickoffs.
Yeah.
So that they didn't have a kicker out there having to worry about whether they can make a tackle. So like I said, I think he could actually get a couple nice touchdowns that way, punt return, something like that. And from everything that I've been reading from OTA so far, he looks night and day better as a route runner. Looks more comfortable in what he's doing on the field. And yeah, year 2, your head is spinning. Year 1, year 2, you can actually kind of settle in and start working on the little details. So I expect a pretty big year from him. And we've heard Sean Payton now 3 times in press conferences talk about this of it was our fault that Marvin Mims didn't get more touchdowns or more touches. It's our fault that we didn't use him the right way. So you're seeing that, like they're watching it on tape and going, we messed up with this kid. He could have been so much more as a rookie than what he was. And so I don't expect them to make that same mistake. I think obviously having quarterbacks that can run the system that Sean Payton wants to run helps out. And I definitely expect him to have a big year. But since I'll go one that's different than you, I'll go on the defensive side of the ball. And I will say Riley Moss will lead the team in interceptions.
Oh, okay. All right. I have one like this as well. Go ahead.
Okay. So my thinking here, I do think he's going to win the number 2 cornerback role. Broncos invested a lot in this kid. I know he was just a 3rd round pick, but when you used a 3rd round pick and traded a 3rd round pick to get this guy, he's worth more than that. Like they're showing, like, we believe this kid could be something. And you look at his time with Iowa, they love to set up their cornerbacks for big turnovers. And Riley Moss, I mean, he was kind of all over the place, but he did have a 4 interception season. His first senior year, and then his redshirt senior year, he only had 1. But yeah, I think that he could, and he's going to get a lot of targets too.
Yep.
Most teams are just going to go, why would we throw out Patrick Surtain? Let's look at these other guys that we have on the field. They don't have the best known safeties. The other cornerbacks are all completely unknowns. And so it's not that I expect Riley Moss to go out there and dominate per se, but I just think he's going to get a lot of opportunities and he's going to take advantage of some of them. Now, he might give up 4 touchdowns, but if he can counter that with 4 interceptions, I think I would probably count that as a pretty good season for a number 2 cornerback.
Well, and especially after missing the majority of last year. I think he played like 15 total defensive snaps last year, and the majority of that came towards the end of the season, if not all of it. So for him to come out and bounce back, win that starting cornerback number 2 job, like that's a huge deal for him. I'm going to stay with the same conversation here because my guy on this is PJ Locke is going to lead the team in interceptions. And a big part of that is because we don't know who that cornerback 2 is going to be right now, whether it's Riley Moss, whether it's Levi Wallace, who was brought in free agency, or whether it's Chris Abrams-Drain, who was drafted in the 5th round, a guy that I like a lot in this Vance Joseph scheme. But with the way that cornerback 2 sits right now, Surtain's not going to get very many opportunities. You're probably going to stick away from Jaquan McMillan over the middle of the field in terms of his ability to cover out of the slot, because he had, I think, 4 last season alone. So you're now targeting that cornerback number 2. But let's talk about the versatility of PJ Locke here for a minute, because he's got that single high range. Like, he's got enough speed and fluidity as a single high safety. He can play as a cover 1 or a cover 3 middle of the field closed type of safety and get into those open passing lanes, working sideline to sideline. He also has enough physicality and versatility to drop down into the pass pattern over the middle of the field and create a bunch of different disguised coverages in Vance Joseph's defensive scheme. Like, he played so well last year, and I think this is going to be a big boost for him. And a big reason why I say that is, let's go back to the Green Bay Packers game. We were all there for the Mile High Huddle meet and greet. The play that sealed the game showed exactly what I'm talking about. PJ Locke ranged like 25 yards. He went all the way across the field to go and pick off Jordan Love to close that game. Like, he's got the ability. He's got the talent. He's going to have a big-time opportunity with Justin Simmons being a free agent right now. I wanted to say out of the way, but that's not necessarily fair to him. Like, PJ Locke has this opportunity now to go out there and create a name for himself. And I think he's going to step up in a big way this year based on what I saw last season.
Yeah, he was another one I was considering. Watch us both be wrong, and it's Cody Barton.
Mr. Backside.
Yeah. But no, he's definitely a great choice. I've from everything that I've been listening to from those that have been at OTAs and stuff, they have talked about how he's really stepped up as a leader. He's kind of stepped into that Justin Simmons spot, not in the sense of being the free safety, but in the sense of just being the voice on the field, being that guy that's getting everybody lined up, talking to players, all those kind of things. And it sounds like coaches are really liking what he's doing on the field, that he's really taken that next step in his development. So yeah, I could see definitely a big season from him. He was such a bright shining light on that defense after seeing him, kind of get thrown into the starting lineup because of suspension. And all of a sudden it's like the defense actually improved because he got put on the field. And, I'm not trying to take away from the others, but like I said, he just kind of was that nice, consistent player on the field, knew where the ball was going, made some great plays in the run game coming up and helping, filling in gaps. So he is definitely set up to have a really big season. And of all the safeties, because I know there's a safety competition, Locke is the guy that I feel most locked into being a starter. I don't know about the other safety spot. I'm guessing it's going to be Jones, but I think Locke for sure is going to be that guy on the field. So that's a good one. I'll go to the offensive side now, and I'll go Lucas Kroll will have over 500 yards receiving.
Okay.
So we're talking bold here.
Yeah.
And I know that doesn't sound too bold, but from the tight end position for the Broncos, that's pretty bold since Julius Thomas has left the building.
Yeah.
It's just been a long time since the Broncos have had that kind of production on a consistent basis from the tight end position. And it sounds like he's having a great OTAs, getting well acquainted with each of the quarterbacks. With Dulcich still banged up, like Kroll has gotten an opportunity, and sounds like he's really taking advantage of that, making a lot of catches on the field, being one of those guys that quarterbacks can trust to catch it when they're in tight coverage, all those kind of things. So I think he could be that guy. And I remember, halfway through the season where they kind of brought him up from the practice squad and watched him in a couple games. And I was like, oh man, this guy actually moves well. Like there's a lot of plays he's pretty well open. And unfortunately, Russell Wilson couldn't find him. And that was kind of my first time of really thinking like, hey, we've got a little something in a tight end. And I know the Broncos tried on a couple other tight ends this offseason, but it's not like they went crazy trying to get a guy. And I think part of that is that they believe a little bit in this Kroll guy to be something. Not saying that he's going to be the answer at tight end for the long term, but I think he can be good enough to at least keep teams honest when he's on the field of, are they going to throw? Are they going to pass? What are they going to do with this guy? I think he can be a nice outlet for the quarterbacks. And 500 yards receiving, like I said, it doesn't sound too bold, but for the tight ends, that's pretty bold.
It really is. And I think specifically for Kroll, because like you said, they brought him on late last season. I know everybody remembers I think it was the final play against the Houston Texans where Russell Wilson kind of threw him that jump ball. And it was like, who's 85? Like, why the hell are we throwing it to this unknown tight end? Well, guess what, guys? This guy's very talented. He's athletic. Yeah. He's got range. He's got bounce. He's got great hands from what I understand. And Sean Payton just came out the other day and said, by the end of this year, you're going to know who number 85 is for the Denver Broncos, because he has the ability to go out there and be an elite player, quite honestly. Like, I'm curious to see how much his impact is affected by the presence or absence. And I'm going to say it exactly like that: presence or absence of Greg Dulcich, because Dulcich has the ability, that seam stretching threat that you can push the ball down the field if you want to. And I remember I've said this multiple different times. I actually wrote an article about it at milehighhuddle.com a couple of years ago, with how the Broncos, this is under Nathaniel Hackett, not Sean Payton, but they were utilizing Greg Dulcich and KJ Hamler on the same side of the field, lined up in the slot together, where you can really utilize some speed mismatches, some size mismatches and stuff like that. So this year you have Marvin Mims, you have a guy like Troy Franklin who brings that speed presence to it as well. With Greg Dulcich, how much do you think that his presence or absence really affects the ability of Kroll to get out there and be a dynamic player for this offense?
I don't think it affects it that much, because Dulcich, you can't trust him to be healthy. You can't trust him in the run game is the other big thing.
Yeah,
he is a big time negative if you ask him to go out there and run block. There are so many plays you just watch defenders almost get a smile on their face when they see Dulcich lined up across from them and get a chance just to throw him to the side for a great run stop. So I think his opportunities are going to be very limited. He's going to be a third and long tight end. That it's an obvious passing situation. Maybe you want to work on a couple formations. Maybe they're playing you very small, and so you want to get a little bit more size on the field to go make some plays. I think Kroll's going to be that guy that wins the all-around tight end. He's not the greatest blocker by any means, but he's not horrible either. He's competent in that spot. And then if he can bring it as a receiver and prove to be that guy that can stay on the field for you, like that's what you want. You want a guy that can not give up to the defense what you're going to do on any given play from the tight end spot. And so, like I said, I think Dulcich is just going to be so limited that Kroll's going to get more opportunities, more snaps. And Dulcich might have some of those better catches down the field on those third and long plays. But mostly I see him being like a 20 catch, 250 yard kind of season, maybe a couple touchdowns. That's what I see from, like if Dulcich gives that to us this year, I'm gonna be like, okay, that it's better than I expected. It's more than I could have hoped for, just because he's not been that guy for us.
I really want Greg Dulcich to break out this year. I really want him to be healthy, because I think that there's so much dynamic pass catching ability that he brings to the field. Obviously, wide receiver in high school, transition to tight end at UCLA. Like, he's got the athleticism that his catch radius is like the size of an Olympic swimming pool, man. I swear, he's all over the place. Trustworthy hands. I hope that he can stay healthy, because if he can bring that dynamic pass catching ability over the middle of the field specifically and open up the shot plays to the outside, like, God, that's going to be so much fun to watch. Kroll, though, is very intriguing, and I agree with you. He's a much better blocker at the point of attack. Like, that's going to be really one of the bigger separators in terms of who gets to play the most out of this tight end room. Troutman's fine. Like, Adam Troutman is an okay blocker. I think Kroll has upside. If he develops that technique and gets a little bit more play strength in his lower half, he could really shine there. But the ability for him to go out there, be that big body threat, be that red zone threat, show the reliability and trustworthiness is really going to help Bo Nix. So I appreciate the shout out here. Speaking of, though, I'm going to stay on the offensive side of the ball. Speaking of reliability and the ability to take pressure off of Bo Nix, I'm going to go to a guy that recently drafted, Audric Estime. I think Audric Estime is going to rush for 1,000 yards this year. And I mean that with my chest, because you're going to see a run-heavy emphasis from this Broncos offense this year. They're going to try to take away as much pressure from Bo Nix as they possibly could, and Estime is Sean Payton's guy. There's rumblings that him and Javonte Williams are not necessarily seeing eye to eye. Javonte could be a surprise cut candidate this year, and if it's not Javonte, Samaje Perine could be shown the door as well. I mean, you're talking like $3.5 million saved against the salary cap this year. Like, one of these top two running backs from this last season are probably not going to be wearing a Broncos uniform this upcoming season. Another reason why I think this is bold is because Sean Payton typically doesn't play rookies except at the running back position. Like, Alvin Kamara rushed for 700 plus yards in his rookie season. Mark Ingram rushed for over 400 in a timeshare in that backfield. Chris Ivory back in 2010 in a timeshare with Pierre Thomas rushed for 700 plus. Like, there's an opportunity here for Audric Estime to unseat one of these two veterans and take over that starting running back role. He also has the ability to fall forward and the mentality to, like, run through tackles. He's not an easy player to take down. And the more you feed him the football, the stronger he gets. This is, quite honestly, the early Sean Payton era in New Orleans, where we're going to focus on running the football, make it as easy as we possibly can on our quarterback, and just dictate matchups the way that we need to. Estime, to me, I think is 1,000-yard back as a rookie this year.
So I had somebody ask me the other day if I thought the Broncos could have a defense that held teams under 20 points a game. And my answer was, I think it's more depends on what the offense can do than what the defense brings, because I don't expect the defense talent-wise to be top 16 in the league.
Yep.
They got a lot of young pieces. Unless a couple of these guys take ridiculous leaps forward, they're not going to be there. I said the only way that this happens is if the offense controls the game so well that that time of possession, they're limiting the number of drives that the other team has, that then maybe they could get to that kind of place. I still don't think they could get there even with that. But like you said, that focus on the run game, getting to the power game, just running down their throats, having a little speed to the edge as well with a couple of these other guys, controlling that clock, keep moving the ball, win field position, all those kind of things are going to be a huge emphasis for this team if they're going to be successful this year. Now, see, I went a different direction. I went with a different running back rushing for 1,000 yards.
Okay.
I did go with Javonte. I'm torn on this because I do know, like, obviously last year was pretty much a big time letdown. Part of that is his weaknesses were really shown well last year, in the sense of couldn't find the hole, lack of burst. And when he can't run people over, he becomes a very limited player. And so I do expect him to be back this year. I expect that burst to be back. And I think the Broncos will lean into him. I think Estime, as the season goes on, will start taking more and more carries. But I just think early on, Javonte is going to be the guy they lean into with a rookie quarterback starting. Yes, I do think Bo Nix will be the starter.
Yep.
And I think he'll be a very big time focus. So I do expect 1,000 yards rushing from him this year.
I think it's fair to at least say that somebody on this Broncos roster is going to rush for 1,000 yards. Like, quite honestly, whether it's Javonte Williams or it's Audric Estime, one of those two guys is going to be here. And I think that so Eric and I have been doing a 53-man roster projection, and I have Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine and Audric Estime being on this roster. But it wouldn't surprise me to see one of those top two guys be gone this year and Estime take a substantial role, quite honestly, because of his ability to, like, he's something like 96% conversion rate on short yardage situations. He's gonna see the field, whether it's in the red zone, between the 20s. He's going to see the field this year. I also don't know that Javonte, with what we saw last season, and the lack of burst, the lack of vision, and just the way that he wore down over the end of the year, and seeing Samaje Perine really kind of accentuate his ability as a receiver coming out of the backfield as like another safety blanket for the quarterback for Russell Wilson last year. Javonte, while he's dynamic enough to be able to do that, he didn't show that reliably over his rookie season. Obviously, the second year he tore that ACL, so it's hard to kind of see that, but. Tell me who's the better receiver here. Is it Samaje Perine or is it Javonte Williams? The answer to me is quite clearly Samaje Perine. You have now two similar players, one that has better vision, one that has better contact balance, one that has a driving home the hammer football player in Audric Estime that's also on a rookie contract, not on the last year of his deal, where the Broncos can move on from a guy like Javonte Williams. It just makes too much sense to me to see if, again, bold prediction here, Javonte Williams might not be a Bronco comes the beginning of the season, quite honestly. Like, I could see that happening, even with Audric Estime's the knee surgery that he's coming off of surgery again. Like, Estime is primed to start as a rookie this year, and Javonte Williams could be a surprise cut, quite honestly.
Yeah, I think he's either traded for cheap, 6th, 7th round pick. I still think that he has a little bit of trade value, little bit, not a whole lot, because he is cheap. He is second year coming off that, so you're thinking you're buying low, being able to reap the rewards for something a little bit more than that. So I think he's either traded or the starter. I don't think there's anything in between that.
Right.
I lean towards Perine being the guy that's going to end up getting cut. Saves a little bit more cap wise. Gets your room a little bit younger, but yet you still have the veteran there in Javonte Williams. Mm-hmm. Javonte, when healthy, is definitely the more dynamic of those two. Brings that big playability, which you're going to need on this roster. And when he was healthy his rookie year, like, teams feared when Javonte Williams was on the field. What is this guy going to do on this play? He might drag 5 people. It was either going to be a -1 lost play, or he's going to drag 5 people down the field. There wasn't much in between those two, it seemed like. So, like I said, I still think he's going to be here. I'm going to say that he rushes for 1,000 yards. And I did see a couple people asking about how did Bo Nix do with tight ends there in Oregon? He did okay. They had a guy named Terrence Ferguson who had about 450 yards receiving, I think 6 touchdowns, if I remember right. So it's a position that he looks at, but it's not a huge focal point. I'm looking more, instead of at Bo Nix, I'm looking more at Sean Payton. What has he done with tight ends?
Yeah.
And in the past, when he's had some talent at the tight end position, he has used them well. They've been touchdown machines, especially when you're getting down into the red zone. I think Sean Payton has top 3 red zone package in the NFL.
I don't disagree with that.
That's his place to shine. Some other areas on the offense, I have a little bit of questions about, but when it comes to red zone play calls, there was one play call last year that I still can't remember. Oh, I think it was Troutman caught a touchdown. And they were at like the the
Yep.
15-yard line, and nobody was within 10 yards of him. How does that happen? It was just such a beautiful play call, set up well. And so I'm excited to see more of that this year. But yeah, I think if you get a good enough tight end to work in this system, Bo Nix is going to be able to take advantage of that, especially in the red zone, looking for those bigger bodies. Go win a couple of those jump balls for you. I think that could be it. But all right, I'll get to my next one here. And I'm going to say, I'll say Bo Nix wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. And here's why. I do think that the defense is not going to be great. I hate saying that. So I think they're going to give up some points. And I think the Broncos are going to have to throw it more than they want. And, if Javonte Williams is rushing for 1,000 yards, then probably Bo Nix is not winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. So I'm kind of hedging my bets of how this team's going to be this year. I'm putting it on both ends of how things are going to go. But I think they're going to probably have to throw quite a bit. So Bo Nix is going to get a lot of yards. Doesn't mean he's going to look perfect by any means, but because he's going to get a lot of opportunities where some of these other quarterbacks, usually quarterbacks win it for the offensive side. If they produce at any kind of like average level for the NFL, they're probably winning Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
That's how that goes. Caleb Williams, he's going to have a good setup there in Chicago. I don't like their coaching staff all that much. I think they're going to have some struggles there. He does have some great weapons, but that offensive line, going to have to see how they play out. The other quarterbacks, against Jaden Daniels, he's another one. He's going to have some tough competition with him because of his running ability. But the other quarterbacks, I don't even know if they're going to start. Drake May. If I was New England, I'm not sure I'd want him to start year one, just because they don't have the talent to help him right now. They don't have a great offensive line. Wide receivers, you're probably depending on a ton of that on those two rookies that they drafted to be something day one. So it might be best just to protect him, let him sit for a year, at least 8 games, let your team kind of get into the place. You got JJ McCarthy. From stories that I read, they were talking of when Sam Darnold was picked up, they pretty much told him, like, even if we draft somebody, you are our starter. Now, given he's got to go out there and show it.
Right.
But they kind of gave him some securities there of, yeah, we want you starting this year. And I think, JJ McCarthy, I think he's a good young prospect, but he probably does need a year just to sit and learn and figure some things out. So, like I said, I think Bo Nix probably gets the most run at quarterback this year of all the rookies. And if you put up some stats, if he puts up 25 touchdowns and 4,500 yards, probably win an Offensive Rookie of the Year.
I was going to say you're over, like, you're surpassing what CJ Stroud did last year at that particular point for the most part. But
okay, that's true.
Of course, you're going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think if you get 20 touchdown passes out of Bo Nix, you've got a conversation for sure. And you've already got the narrative out there with Caleb Williams. Like, everyone wants him to be the Rookie of the Year, number 1 overall draft pick, the flashy quarterback prospect. He's the next Patrick Mahomes. Like, you've got some steep hills to climb here in terms of Bo Nix winning the Offensive Rookie of the Year. But I like it. I do like it, because what that means is that the Broncos have some success offensively, and whether they do win 5 games this year or they win 10 games and are on the verge of the playoffs, if you get Bo Nix to have an offensive rookie season where he's got 3,500 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, less than 10 interceptions, you've got a quality quarterback there, and that to me is a big sign. I don't give a damn what this Broncos record is this year. The wins and losses doesn't matter to me. To me, quite honestly, I've heard this take a lot around, and I agree with it 100%, whether it's Denver sports media, national media, it doesn't matter. James Palmer was talking about this the other day as well. It doesn't matter what the Broncos record is this year. All that really matters is the development of Bo Nix and how he shows the capability of handling the starting duties of a quarterback in the NFL. Like, you have to understand exactly what you have with your number 12 overall draft pick. Is he a quarterback that you can rely on, that you can develop and turn into a franchise quarterback, or does he not show those capabilities? If you get him in the rookie of the year conversation, you obviously landed on your guy. So that's very bold. I definitely I agree with you on that one. And my expectation for him is like I said, 3,500 yards, 20 touchdowns, somewhere around in there, middle of the road starter capabilities. If he shows that as a rookie this year, I'm very, very excited about the potential for this Broncos offense moving forward.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's like I said, if you can answer that quarterback question during his rookie year, it's kind of like Peyton Manning. They were terrible his rookie year. I think they went 3-13 that season. And he did throw 18 interceptions. 28 interceptions. But you also saw the flashes of you're like, okay, this guy is something. We just got to get him a little more talent, get him cut back on some of those turnovers, and we could really get taken off. The worst thing you could be, and the Bears kind of lucked out, I guess, a little bit, is them Justin Fields after 3 years going, do we have something? Do we not have something?
Yep.
What are we here? And so many teams kind of get stuck in that. I'd even say a little bit, you could maybe argue the Miami Dolphins with Tua.
Yeah. Yep. Or even, so I was talking with my father-in-law earlier today, Tony, and he was saying, what would make you want to move on from Bo Nix in 2025? Like, what would be acceptable for him to not say, if we get a top 3 overall draft pick, the Broncos say finish, 4-13. They have a top 3 overall draft pick. What would make you not want to move on from Bo Nix and take a guy like, whether it's Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders, or whatever quarterback shines and is available there at number 3 overall? He's like, the first 2 years of Trevor Lawrence, hit and miss, up and down. It's not necessarily the greatest, but you see those flashes of this guy has the capability of being a very special player. Is that acceptable to you? Like those rookie years of the first 2 years of Trevor Lawrence, like that to me seems very acceptable in my opinion. If you get that out of Bo Nix right now, by all means, sign me up for that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I've seen some people trying to say they shouldn't give Trevor Lawrence a big contract moving forward. I mean, I'd probably still wait another year, but at the same time, he's shown enough, and he just hasn't had the best around him. He walked into maybe as much as we make fun of Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah.
Urban Meyer as your head coach for your rookie season.
Yep.
That's I don't know who he ticked off to run into that kind of situation, but it was bad. So the fact that he has risen above that and still been able to take some steps forward, and I think he's on the right track. So yeah, if you can get Trevor Lawrence out of Bo Nix, that's great. I think that you would feel very good about that moving forward. So no, you're right. This season, there's a lot of things that can prove to make this a successful season. Making the playoffs, that's a successful season.
Oh yeah.
That also probably means Bo Nix played well. That's the dream. If you can get both of those things in year one, that's CJ Stroud with the Houston Texans going from one of the worst to one of the best. That's the dream. But if you can even say only win that 5 games that everybody's predicting so far with Vegas and everybody, but like you said, Bo Nix proves that he is a guy that you can really start building around. That's a successful season too.
Yeah.
It's just you've got to go through the building blocks of rebuilding everything, because unfortunately, this is the problem with the Broncos took that really big risk in trading for Russell Wilson. Yep. You took on not only Russell Wilson, you took on his big contract, and you traded all these first-round picks and second-round picks. And so your team is just void of some of those young, talented players that you could hope you can really start building, say, hey, these are our building blocks. Right now, the Broncos only have a few building blocks on this roster. I'd say Quinn Miners, Patrick Surtain. I'm having trouble with that next one.
It really
those
is.
Those are your 2 for sure ones. But beyond them, now you got to hope that Bo Nix is that next piece, because that's the really big piece to add to it.
Yep.
You hope maybe you've got something at one of these wide receivers you drafted. You got to hope Jonah Ellis can really take a big step for that defensive line to really help you out.
Yep.
And then a couple of these other guys that have been around, like a Riley Moss, being able to do something well. And we got Michael coming in again saying, great show tonight, Lance and Carl on Dove Valley Deep Divers, go Broncos. Again, thank you so much there, Michael.
Thanks, Mike.
But like I said, if you had Jonah Ellis, another one of my bold predictions was going to be Nick Bonitto.
I got you. I'm right here with you. Let's go. Go ahead.
I said double-digit sack season for him. And that's really not that bold, honestly, when I think about it, because he had 8.5 sacks last season. And I thought, I remember draft night when we did our live draft. Broncos drafted Nick Bonitto. I don't think any of us had a smile on our face.
We didn't.
And his rookie season kind of proved us right. But this last year, I thought he took a really nice step forward.
Yeah.
Yes, a few of his sacks were as easy as they come, where it was just free lane, go to the quarterback, make the play. But you also saw he has some incredible explosion around the edge that nobody else on this roster has. A guy that can get to the quarterback in 2 seconds or less.
Yep.
He's the only one on this roster that I believe can actually do that right now.
Yep.
And so I do. I think he's got a little bit of special talent. He took a decent step forward as a run defender. Doesn't mean he's great, but he went from like biggest liability that I've seen to, okay, he's okay. Like, it's not going to be perfect, but he's also not going to be thrown 10 yards back. So if he can take that next step, and I think he will. I've been reading about his time. Again, OTAs, it's tough because no pads on, limited blocking at this point, but it does sound like he has been getting into the backfield, making plays. He's ready for a big season this year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I got excited because when you said Nick Bonitto recording double-digit sacks, it literally lines up with my second, the one that I wrote down. Nick Bonitto records 12 sacks this year. And a big part of it is, again, like you said, that ability to, be a explosive pass rusher off the edge, develop that pass rush repertoire. And like, he's got speed, he's got bend, that first step quickness is just incredible. Last year, obviously, was a little bit different because, like you said, 8.5 sacks, I believe 5 of them were untouched coming off the offensive line. Like, he did not have to really fight through that one-on-one contact. He cleans up a lot of plays. But to me, I think that the biggest factor in Nick Bonitto's success this year is the addition of Jonathan Franklin Myers. I keep going back to this. You get a guy like Jonathan Franklin Myers, who's top 10 in pressures among interior defensive linemen over the last 3 years. This dude is incredible at crushing down the pocket. He's great on stunts as well. He has that lateral agility to feint inside to the B gap, twist around to the outside, and open up a gap for a guy like an outside linebacker, whether it was Jermaine Johnson or whoever else was with the Jets there. Those crashing into those inside twist moves that you have. Nick Bonitto has that burst, that first step ability to come across, win those stunts, and just wreck shop as plays start to develop longer, and he can clean up those plays. Like, Bonitto this year has potential to grow into a quality pass rusher. To me, I talked about it last week with Ron on the Orange and Blue View. He also has the biggest bust potential for being one of the bottom 3 defenders on this team this year because of that inability to stop the run. He's got the technique down. It's just a play strength thing with him. He's thin in his lower half. He doesn't have that ability to stack and anchor, shed, and then drive through and go make plays in the running game. He really has to really wash plays out towards the sideline. And if he can keep his outside hand free, he does a really good job of stringing those plays out. I want to see him be able to drop his ass, lower his hips down, bend his knees and drive forward and set a firm edge in the running game this year. And that's my biggest question for him. But in terms of being a pass rusher, this kid has everything you want. Like I said, the speed, the first step explosiveness, the bend. He's got a good pass rush repertoire in terms of a spin move. He's got a rip swipe. He's got a swim move as well if you want it. Like, if he can really hone those skills in, he can be a top tier pass rusher, and 12 sacks is definitely possible for a player of his caliber.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you left off the list that I was really impressed with last year was his awareness.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, part of why he was unblocked on 5 of those was because they were running a bootleg play or something along those lines, play action.
Yep.
And he recognized it. And so he was able to be there right in the quarterback's face. And he did great also, you know, when the run play was right at him, you're right. Play strength becomes a major concern with him. But when they were running away from him, he did a great job on tracking it, getting there, making the play, coming up from behind. So I just, like I said, if he can take that next step, if he can just keep building each year a little bit more to what he brings to the table. I agree. I don't think ever in his career he's going to be this top 15 edge run defender. That's just not how he's built.
Yep.
But if he can become, you know, just competent in that area, and then you add in what he can bring as a pass rusher, that's a really good player. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, we got a little something here that we can start building around. And like I said, adding Franklin Myers to the group, you still have Allen that was able to get into the backfield a little bit more consistent last year. You know, if Baron Browning can stay healthy, you know, you don't have anybody that I would say like puts fear in a offensive coordinator or a quarterback's mind, but you've got some competent players across the board that now you can start looking at and saying, okay, somebody's going to win their one-on-one battle here. We can feel pretty good about that. You know, it's not going to be a top 10 pass rush group, but again, if they can get even to top half of the league, I would consider that a huge victory from what they were last year. You know, when they were like 30th in win rate when getting after the quarterback. So, like I said, and then Jonah Ellis, if he brings anything this year, that would be great to see. We'll have to see if he can bring anything more than a spin move. Because I know teams will be keying in on that. But yeah, so I expect a big year from Nick Bonino.
But you also got Jonathan Cooper, who is more than just a guy, in my opinion. I think that he's going to develop, and he might be one of those guys where you bold predict him as, is he the guy that gets the contract extension over Baron Browning because he is effective as a run defender? He's brings a little bit of juice as a pass protector. Like, let's save a little bit of money, keep the depth around, and just show love to a guy that really is developed into a nice player. I'm not going to say he's a great player. He's a nice player for a rotational pass rusher. Like Jonathan Cooper, I think is going to turn some heads this year in terms of his development. We running short on time. I got one more for you. And Carl, this one is by far the wildest one.
Okay.
But I think I have it kind of pegged down here. This offensive line gets not nearly as much credit for as good as they are last season. Like, Mike McGlinchey really is the one that got the short end of the stick. Eric did a great job. Eric Trickle did a great job breaking down, you know, like Mike McFlinchy and the whole false starts and stuff like that. His pass protection is not necessarily the greatest, but I think we're going to see a big bounce back year here for Mike McGlinchey. I think he's going to make a Pro Bowl, because when you look at what Mike McGlinchey is as a pass protector, he really relies on the structure and the timing of his pass protection sets. Getting the ball out quickly helps him in pass protection. He wasn't nearly as bad as people wanted to say that he was last season, because Russell Wilson held on to the football way too long. There are multiple times, and Eric, like I said, go check out the article that Eric Trickle has on milehighhuddle.com. There's like 5 or 6 different sacks that were credited to Mike McGlinchey that weren't on him. They were on Russell Wilson. But again, you focus on the structure of the passing game, getting the football out quickly, and then you focus on Mike McGlinchey as a run blocker. This dude is an elite run blocker at the right tackle position, with more emphasis on the running game to help Bo Nix adapt to the NFL level. Mike McGlinchey has a big time bounce back season this year, and dare I say, a Pro Bowl year. He's got the talent. He has the ability. I want to see it.
Yeah, I mean, when he was healthy with the 49ers, and you think of that Kyle Shanahan offense that's built on, like you said, being on time, getting the ball out to the right receiver, right play, all those kind of things. He did fine. I mean, he wasn't perfect as a run blocker or as a pass blocker by any means, but he was competent enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, then you add in what he brings in the run game, and now him being, especially next to Quinn Miners, who could have an all-pro season. Like I said, if they really focus on the run game and let him just go pancake people. I love, I can't remember who does some of the breakdowns after games.
Brandon Thorne.
His name will come. No, his name will come to me here in a little bit. But anyway, he did some highlights of Quinn Miners after a few of the games, and he goes, "This guy has as many pancakes in a game as most players hope to have in a season."
Oh, Brian Baldinger.
Yeah, there you go. That's the guy. And it's right. That's exactly who it is. So having him next to you, having those two guys clearing the way in the run game, that is the way to success for this team for this upcoming season. Like I said, run the heck out of the football, have that be your identity, run clock off so you have fewer drives for the other team to score. Hopefully you can get some things done in the red zone, and hopefully the defense can be a good red zone defense. That's going to be the key. If they're going to be successful as a defense, is holding teams to field goals. Get a couple timely turnovers or special teams plays, and maybe the Broncos can have a playoff kind of season. Again, I don't think they have the most talent, but I think you can, because of this coaching staff, you can outcoach some of these other teams to victories.
Yeah. I think that's a very great way to segue into this last one. And this is when I starred from the comment section. We got Irma jumping in here. First time I'm seeing your name, but thank you for joining us. Hey guys, my bold prediction is that Denver squeezes into the playoffs at 9-8 and steals a wild card playoff game. As it currently stands, last I was aware, the Broncos have an over/under with Las Vegas at 5.5 wins this season. 9-8 obviously surpasses that. Getting into the playoffs would be just crazy. Stealing a playoff game would be insane. But Carl, what say you? Obviously too early, but bold prediction. 9-8, man. What do you think of that?
I mean, I don't think it's too crazy. They went 8-9 last year.
Yeah.
And if you get a quarterback that fits better with what Sean Payton wants to do, and you've got all these guys now, second year of the system, feeling more comfortable. I don't think that's too crazy. I know in that 5-game winning streak, a lot of people would go, some of those were fluky, but I'd also say they had some fluky losses as well last year. I think that kind of balanced out in my opinion. And so, like I said, second year of Sean Payton, he has never had a worse season than 7 wins. I know a lot of people are predicting that 5.5, but I do believe in him quite a bit as a coach. I think, like I said, he can outcoach a couple teams to get a couple victories that maybe people were not expecting. And to steal a game in the playoffs, I mean, it's anybody's game. Think about Tim Tebow. He won a playoff game for the Broncos, and nobody gave them a chance in that one. And so if Tim Tebow can win a playoff game, Broncos can win a playoff game against somebody.
You answered my last question for you. Your trust in Sean Payton to get this team over the hump. I just quickly the other day when we were talking about the record breakdown with me and Eric on DVDD a couple weeks ago, I was like, 3 wins it's hard to get much more out of that. I mean, you got the Panthers game for sure is probably a win. Another one, you might steal one from the Raiders, steal one from the Chargers. It's possible to get to 5. I also think that Sean Payton does add a big factor here. You're talking about a Super Bowl winning coach. Like this guy is a quality play caller. He's a quality coach. He's a quality decision maker. Everything about football. Sean Payton has done it, and he's done it at a high level for the majority of his career. 9-8, I think, is a little rich. I said 3 just quick off the cuff. I think 5, 6, 7 wins is achievable. If you overachieve a little bit, 8 is probably about there because you're dealing with a rookie quarterback in this situation as well. Russell Wilson, for as much as we want to crap on what he was last season, he won that Buffalo Bills game last year. Absolutely. I think you got the turnovers in there as well. That throw that he made to Cortland Sutton in the corner of the end zone late in that game was just spectacular. That play helped win that game. Can you count on Bo Nix to be able to go out and make those same kinds of plays this year to help you steal wins from the jaws of defeat? I don't know. But I do trust in Sean Payton to get this team in the right situations to be able to go out there and win some football games they probably should be losing this year. With that, though, guys, we do have to say goodbye to everybody. Before we get out of here, I want to make sure you guys follow us on Twitter by finding me at LanceS_MHH, for Carl at Carl Dumler. Thank you, Scott, for joining us tonight behind the scenes, helping us run the ones and twos at Scout Kennedy. Also, guys, while you are at it, please make sure that you are following at Mile High Huddle. That's some other account where you guys find breaking news and analysis, opinion articles, film breakdowns, anything regarding your Denver Broncos. You will find it at Mile High Huddle on Twitter and at milehighhuddle.com. Also, guys, if you're on Facebook, go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. Keep the conversation going there. We definitely appreciate you guys for joining us every single night. MHHmerch.com. That is the merch tent. Get yourself a hat, get yourself a t-shirt, get yourself a onesie for your baby, a coffee cup, anything that suits your fancy. You can find it there at MHHmerch.com. And if you guys are not financially able to do so, please, at the bottom of the screen, this ticker runs all the time before we close out the show. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle across all of your major platforms on social media, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, does not matter. If you can find Mile High Huddle on it, please subscribe. It helps us out so much. Like every video and article you guys see across those social media platforms as well. And if you love it, please share it and get it out in front of as many Broncos fans as humanly possible, because without your guys' love and appreciation, we could not do what we do best, which is cover your Denver Broncos. Now, with that, Carl, I do have to ask you a quick question that I ask to Eric every single time we get out of here. Any last words?
No, I think this is fun. And just remember, these are bold predictions. It's not necessarily what we see happening. It's just some things that we think would be fun. And we could see if everything goes right, this could be the possibility.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that have to go right to make these bold predictions actually happen. That's why they're called bold. They're not expected. You know, if it was the expected, hey, Javonte Williams will rush for 500 yards this year. The bold is saying, hey, a guy that hasn't rushed for 1,000 yards is also going to rush for 1,000 yards. Yeah. So, like I said, just keep that in mind as we're going through this. But Lance, thanks for letting me join you tonight, man. It's a lot of fun talking through this. Always a fun conversation to go through the bold predictions.
It really is. Like I said, we did this show a couple of years ago. It was before I started Dove Valley Deep Divers with Eric, and that was a lot of fun. I think I did one with Nick as well. I talked about Case Keenum being a top 10 quarterback in the NFL at one point. Like it was wild. I think I had Devontae Adams getting like 10 touchdowns with you or something like it. It was like not necessarily super bold, but it actually came true. But these conversations are always fun, dude. And I can't wait to sit down and have another conversation with you, whether it's on here, whether it's privately, whether we get face-to-face again at the Mile High Huddle meet and greet. Hopefully I'll be able to attend. But no, it's always great to sit down and have a conversation with somebody with an outside perspective, something to get out of the echo chamber, bring some new interesting insights to open up different conversations and just be more collaborative in terms of what we do here at Mile High Huddle or even outside of this with other social media platforms. But with that, we do have to say goodnight to everybody. You all stay safe and take care. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we will see you guys same time, same place next week. And as always, go Broncos.